Okay, what's up? We're just gonna have some fun today with some delay pedals, and I'm not gonna do anything super scientific, but this is what I would normally do. I'm trying out new pedals or whatever. I would try to compare to different things I could get from the other ones and see what if it stands up to or does something similar or different, or what the strengths and weaknesses are. So I am right now trying this Mako D1, which is a pretty great workhorse pedal. It's a one pedal unit, so it's a great size. You're not going to get a featured pedal any smaller than that. It has a lot of the features that some of the bigger ones like Empress or Timeline has. Not quite as many full features as that, but it has a lot of the different things. It has you could go into a vintage mode, a digital mode. You could do reverse. You could make it darker. You could this button here is really useful because which I don't really see in any other delay pedals, is you could soften the attack so that if you're playing a lead or whatever, the initial note becomes more ambient, more like a reverb, and you could do ambient things. I'm not going to get into so many fancy things because with all these fully featured delay pedals, there's a billion things you could do. But at the end of the day, for me at least, there's two or three main things I need to get out of a delay. I need a slapback, something that's a little more of a rock delay. Like an '80s style, like just a delay that's like not quite a slapback, a little longer and not so wet, but just gives it a little body. And then something a little more wet for like Pink Floyd, crazy solos where you're doing some slow melodic leads and you just want it to be ambient and big. And one tricky thing is when you're running right into the front of the amp. When you're doing clean, it's a certain setting may not be that wet, and then once you push it into the front of the amp, all those delays get magnified, and it's way too wet. So either you find a setting that kind of works with both, and sometimes you do that by lessening the attack, darkening it up, so it doesn't fight those when the delays are louder. But anyway, let's just try some things. First, I kind of set these up. Now I have a Maxon AD80, AD as in the letters, and 80 as in the numbers, 80. These come pretty inexpensive. You could probably get a used for a little over $100. But it is a great sounding, like it's a warmer. It's fully analog, and and these other pedals are like the Diamond and the Replica are digital, but they're very high regarded as sounding warm and analog-ish, in the realm of like a digital memory man or something like memory man or something like that, or a tape type thing. I think they're trying to model, especially the Replica's trying to be like tape. And Diamond is just a really good sounding delay. I don't know if it's trying to be a tape, but it's a nice sounding delay. It's a little more percussive. So let's use our ears. And what I tried to do is first started getting the slapback. So for me, I really like the Maxon for like a slapback for like country or just giving some bodies. It's got that warmer repeat. Gives it a little bit of body. So I tried to dial something similar to that on the D1, see if it stands up. So it's a similar type. I couldn't quite get it as warm. Now you could adjust the tone. It's like that. But to me, that, even when it gets darker, this is on the vintage setting, by the way. That slapback doesn't sound as full body or warmed as the analog delay. That sounds rounder, a little more natural than one on the D1. And I have the warm thing all the way. And the attack actually, when it's all the way to the left, it's actually a normal attack. Has the most transient on the beginning of the note, and as you turn it to the right, it's a little deceptive that you're kind of softening the attack. So, let's say I soften the attack a little bit to try to get it warm it up less. Up the mix so it's a little more obvious. it's totally usable as a slapback. That sounds to me like old school, like what I've heard on the records growing up. A little more natural sounding to me. Those repeats, it sounds a little more hi-fi, I guess, but if you listen to this, the repeat alone, to me it sounds like a digital repeat trying to sound analog by darkening it up a little bit and softening the front. So that's my opinion. Now let's try against, Diamond. A little bit. Now the Diamond is also very good for slapback, I think. I think the two I like for slapback out of these is the Maxon and the Diamond. The Diamond is a little brighter, but not in a bright, harsh way. It's just it's like still round. And then where the Maxon is. Diamond. And then D1. Granted, D1 fans will probably be like, well, you could tweak it more, but I've been tweaking it quite a bit. I can't quite get a percussive, warm attack that dials it in as good as the Diamond or the Maxon. But totally usable. But that to me, it sounds to me, to my ears, digital trying to sound analog by adding a little bit of distortion on the repeats. Whereas the Diamond, it just does it more naturally, even though it's digital. And then the Replica is not my favorite choice for slapback because it's more tape-ish and it's a little smoother. It's too slapback. You can need a little bit of a punchiness on the front of the note. And this is a little more soft than the. But I kind of prefer Diamond. Yeah, a little bit of a percussiveness, so you could kind of hear it's a little bounce on the note, and it's also for good for stuff like right? Or let's try that with the Maxon. Right with the D1. I think it's a matter of taste. Personally, I still kind of like the Maxon if I wanted something that adds more body to it and just like a slapback on a rock guitar. Let's say you take a rock guitar and you got, dry. If you throw that slapback on there, yeah, it's a little more wetter than you'd normally put it, but I'm trying to exacerbate the effect a little bit. Let's see how the D1 fares on something like that. It definitely gets you in the ballpark. I kind of like that one the best for that. I don't know. I mean, they work. Different ones work better for different things. So it's a little unfair to put the D1 against the best thing that each one of these does. But what I'm looking for, and I haven't found it yet, is a delay that kind of does the best of all the different things. Not maybe the best, but really, let's say does a slapback maybe as good as the Diamond or Maxon, in my opinion. But also could do those, those more ambient things and does them all well. Now, what I would say about this Diamond, about the D1, the Mako D1, which is a Walrus pedal, is it's I don't want to downplay it. It does a lot of stuff very well, and it's very flexible. You have your tone knob, you have your attack knob, and you have your age knob, age setting, which between those three, you could really dial in and tweak a lot of sounds. Oh, it's a little too bright. I want it to be darker. I want it to be a little. I mean, you could, like any of these other pedals, you have one sound. It's a really good sound, but With the D1, you could say, hey, I want it to be darker. I want it to have more of a distortion as it breaks up towards the end, or I want it to do whatever. So many other things you could do. So if you had a gig and you have to get all different sounds, you could bring the D1, dial in pretty quickly. It's a very intuitive interface. You just turn some knobs, you save the setting, you tweak it a little more, you save the setting, you get up to 9 settings. It's color coded, so the switch patches, all you have to do is click both buttons, and you go from the green patch to the blue patch to the red, and you know which one is which, and you could use a switch here. So don't want to downplay it. As a workhorse, it's, I've tried the quadrant. I think it's similar type of like a lot of different things in a small pedal with presets and tap tempo. I think this one sounds a little better than the quadrant. Quadrant is a very good workhorse as well. I like the way this one does the switching of the presets. I did not like the way the quadrant, and I like Alexander, and if you see it, well, you can't see it from this right now, but on top I have an Alexander flanger. But what I did not like about the quadrant, the way it switched patches, is that to switch presets, you would have to take, I think it was the tap tempo button, and hold it down for like a second, and then it would bank to the next patch, and then you'd have to press it and hold it down for a second, and it would bank, unless you got an external tap tempo, which I'm not even talking about, companies saying, oh, you got to buy some external thing to switch. Come on, just put it in the pedal and sell us that. Anyway, but my point is I did not like that about the quadrant, making it something I didn't want to use. What I like about the D1 is I could change the patches. I just hit both buttons at the same time. It goes to the next patch. So if I want to go from the first patch to the third patch, I go click, click, and I'm there. And then, it only does 3 presets per bank, and you got 3 banks, but the switch banks, you got to go to the switch. But as far as a pedal, you could get this in the box today, get at the gig on stage while you're setting up, and in probably 10 minutes, put together 3 patches that are going to work and do the gig with it. It's very intuitive. It's just the knobs and the interface. To save a patch, you just press both, get to the color patch you want, hold them down for 2 seconds, it flashes, and then you got your patch saved. So if you're in the middle of a gig and you say, oh, it's just too wet, this patch is working, but it's too wet, you just go down, make it, adjust the knob to where the wetness you want, hold it down, and your patch is saved, and then in the middle of a song, you could do that. So that's where it has something like the timeline beat, or some of these ones where you have to menu dive. But so as far as a pedal of this size, that could do a lot of things in a gig, is a good workhorse for a professional musician, where you can go in studio or live and get lots of different sounds that you need on the fly, quick. It's a great pedal. So it's totally, I could take it to a gig today and I would be fine. But if I'm looking for the be all end all delay, and looking at, I'm going to be looking at all sorts of delay pedals and probably doing more videos. We gotta hold a little bit of a higher standard and find something that really I just love the sound of, and is a workhorse, and hopefully isn't too big. But there's only there's not too many that are this small that has this many features in it. The quadrant, which I say is like a lesser version of this, and less expensive as well. Totally great pedal. But I think this one sounds a little better. It's a little more flexible, a little more powerful, and the switching is better. And then there's things like the Ventress, which is a little bit bigger, but is like a mini timeline and has sounds on the same level as a timeline. So that might be something worth looking at. The other thing I'm going to be looking at is an Empress, which is a bigger one, but it's probably one of I've had Empress stuff before, and it just sounds beautiful. So we'll be trying that one out, and that might be a really serious contender. But anyway, let's try a little bit of a longer delay. So this is I got a sound on this. On my red patch here, see how easy it is? That's a little more of like a Pink Floyd. Sounds very beautiful. Has a little bit of modulation on it. I darkened it up a little so it doesn't get in. That's a beautiful sound. It's warm, so it's great. So now the Maxon doesn't have that much delay time. Try to get the something similar on the Maxon. D1. Granted, it's a longer delay time, so it's a lot different. But let's try the Diamond. We get both. Diamond also has a beautiful modulation on it. Not very flexible, it's either up or it's down, but whereas you could kind of adjust the modulation a little bit on the D1. Not so much as you can on an Empress or something. So, that's a little bit more of an analogish sound to me. A little warmer, I think. So. It's the diamond. It slightly distorts as it and gets darker as it goes. Very analogish sounding, even though it's a digital pedal. Let's try it this one. Depends what you're going for. That sounds a little more pristine, like a digital pedal. And yes, I did play with the tone, and I'm not going to spend an hour just dialing it in, but I did trying to dial in to get the best sound. And this did work. I used this on a gig at a Pink Floyd solo, and it sounds nice. Very nice actually. You could do something like. Start with the diamond. Again, to me that sounds a little warmer. And then also we could try something similar. Now the TRex is probably the smoothest in my opinion. Probably maybe one of the better ones for the Floyd types of delays. I think I heard David Gilmour actually use the Replica at one point. I'll have it on the dark mode, which is kind of, for solo, is probably good because it gets out of the way of your lead note. So you got. One thing weird about the Replica is that the level changes your dry signal and everything. So. And if you're pushing a loud, like a boost pedal into it, it changes. So it's kind of, it's more like an Echoplex where it has the input level. But we're not, it's just a side note. But anyway. We'll get a little closer with the other one. Replica is it's the smoothest sounding pedal here. It makes it less good probably for Slapback because it's not as punchy, but it has this beautiful smooth sound. Let's play something clean on the Replica. Try Diamond. Different. I think the Replica sounds a little smoother and pretty. Let's try this D1 on that. More comparable to what the setting on the other pedal. Thing again. Try that same thing on a Diamond. all all of them sound good, but something about the replica. It interacts. Similar to like the Echoplex type of pedal. I don't think it has a preamp in it, but it interacts with your dry tone a little bit, warms it up a little bit, has a little bit of a, I don't know, some natural thing that kind of blends it in a way. It just works really nice. You know, D1. Very different sound, and I tried doing the sets to get to kind of match the. It's not just the tone. Try to get the way the transient comes and the warmth of it, and you can't really, you could dial this in to do a lot, but I could not get it to get the kind of sound that I'm getting out of some of these other ones. Again, it sounds like a digital pedal that sounds really good. The modulation is beautiful on it. But if I had to, was in a recording, if I had the gig, I could bring the D1 and I get all the things I needed. But if I was doing a recording session, I wanted to dial in a certain sound. Like the Maxon is great for certain things. It's, you got your Okay, keep in mind that the Maxon, that's the Maxon is already at its maximum setting because it's an analog pedal, so it can't go any longer than that. So not quite a fair comparison, but times aren't exactly the same, but you get the sound of it. See how it kind of distorts as it fades? Does that also in a different way? Never quite. The timing right that time. Just for the purposes of demo. So to me, those repeats, even though it's adding some tape age, some darkness, softening the attack a little bit, it sounds to me like a digital pedal. It's trying to emulate analog. And these guys do it better, I think. Listen. Smooth tapers, and this one is different. And this one. It's like a mid-range thing on the repeats. Even when you pull the tone down, it should warm it up. But there's still a mid-range thing that I'm not crazy about on the repeats. Even when you darken the tone is down all the way to make it nice and warm at the bottom. And let's play with the settings. Tone a little bit brighter, crisper. Take the tape age just so you can show this. You can be very flexible, but I can't quite dial in the sounds that I'm. That's what the tape age kind of. And you could, between the age and the tone, they kind of interact. So you could, play with that. If you want a more analog sound, then you could play with the tape age and the tone and kind of dial it in between the two. On the tack, if you have softy and tack, see how that front of the note, it becomes instead of hearing a little too much. But so just for that setting, just so I change some settings and see how that works with the lead type thing. Notice when it's not so, when you don't have the tone down, a little bit darker, the notes, it gets almost too busy when you have it white wet like that, because the notes are equal repeats in clarity, brightness to the other ones, and then they start kind of clashing with each other. So that's why I usually want to take it dark. on those repeats, darker for those repeats for solo kind of work. And also, if you could take the attack off the front of the note, make it a little less wet. Just let's see if we're at a gig and we're trying to dial this in what we try to get. It's a cool sound. Try the diamond. TRex. If I could play it right. To me, that's one sounds the closest to tape. Ish. That's just, the diamond's kind of in the middle. It's not as dark as an analog or replica. It has a little more of a punch at the beginning of the note, but it's still kind of warmish and analogish sounding. The D1 reminds me a little more of like your the 80s rack units, like your quadraverbs, lexicons, a little more of that digital, as the modulation doesn't quite, and those things were not trying to be tape. They were not trying to be Bucket Brigade. They were their own thing. They were very crystalline clear, and your 2290s and things like that. But they were very beautiful sounding in the digital way. These days, people are looking for things to sound more like tape and Bucket Brigade analog type pedals. Often. But this has a vintage mode, and you could get it in that ballpark and get that in a practical way. But does it do it as beautifully as that? If you're going to be like me, very nitpicky and cork sniffing, in my opinion, no. But if you want something that did like all the stuff back in the 80s when you had quadraverbs and lexicons, but in a little box and on your pedal, it really hits a sweet spot though for a high quality gigging. Like no one would have a problem with going on a gig with this, touring. It makes it really simple. You don't have to have different delays. You could get in the ballpark of a darker, bigger bucket grade, or a tape, or something more digital, more chorusy for police type stuff or whatever. It sounds smooth. It sounds nice ambient. You could switch it on the fly. It's got presets, so it's a great workhorse. Good quality sound. They've done a good job with it. And if someone said, "Oh, you got to use this for all your gigs this next year," I would be okay with that. But I still have personally, I have a personal whatever feeling about these ones because I've bought and sold many delays, and these are 3 that I've kept because they just have something special. As I think you could hear from this, there's something special about each. They have their own thing, and it'd be nice if I could find a delay that kind of encapsulated the best of qualities of these and did them all at that level or close to it. My next the one I'm going to try, a few of them I want to try is the Empress. The Free the Tone has a couple that are like emulation. It's very similar to old 2290s, which is a beautiful sounding rack unit back from the 80s. But the Empress is the one I'm most excited about because that's kind of like the same type of thing like the D1. There's a lot of different things, but I know from using Empress in the past, it's just its own beautiful sound. I think they sound better than Timelines, in my opinion. And then the one that's out now only came out in 2017. They're constantly updating their firmware, their software, whatever, and it's easy with an SD card. So when it came out, it didn't have a looper. Now it has a looper. You don't get that with Timeline. What you get is the same pedal you got 10 years ago. But the reason, and I do have a Timeline, the reason I've been shying away from the Timeline is just the menu dialing things. Even with this, like if I want to dial something in, I know what the capability of this pedal is. Within 10 minutes I can make it darker. I could change the age. I could change the attack. change the different settings, modulation, change the modes, all on the fly in 2 seconds, and try and get as close as I can with this pedal to the sound. With the timeline, I don't even know. I can play with it for hours. If it's a different setting, there's different modes, different menus. I just don't have the patience for that. I want something that I can dial in the sound or not. I'd rather have something like this, where it's like got one great sound, and I'll just dial it and make it work because it sounds great anyway. But I'd like to have some more flexibility. So the timeline, also the timeline, I had it because of all the menu diving and stuff. I played with it for a bunch of times, trying to get different sounds, but I found I did like a few hundred gigs over 2 or 3 years with the timeline on the board, and I wound up using like the same 3 settings: a slapback, a slightly wet delay, like what we were doing, and then like a Pink Floydish really wet delay that I use for like long, slow solos and stuff. And it did other things, but I just never had the time to dial in useful ways. To get that. So I'm also kind of curious to hear the Bell Epoch Deluxe. Now, the problem with the Bell Epoch Deluxe is it doesn't have presets, it doesn't have tap tempo, but you can do a separate expression pedal and adjust the time or the wetness with that. So it's totally usable. Using the expression pedal instead of tap tempo to adjust the time of the delays is kind of a cool idea, but it just takes up so much. It's as big as a timeline anyway, and then you have the pedal. I try to keep things, more practical. But I'm really curious because the sound of it is kind of the closest thing to the old Echoplex, which is a really vibey sound, and probably it may even sound better than these guys for that type of stuff. I don't know. So I'm gonna try that too. But I think the Empress is the closest. The Empress, what's it called? The Echo Station, something like that. I'm curious, and I'm going to be trying that, and I'll do a demo for that one too. There's some other ones I want to try, like the Ventress, and who knows, I might even land up just doing 2, like maybe having something like this, like this one maybe, and use this for slapback, and use something else for the longer ones, and just reach down and make it wet, or maybe have, something like 3 of them. One set really wet, one set somewhat less wet, and something just for slapback. Between the tap tempos, I can get everything I need and get, keep it simple, right? Why not? If I can't find a single unit that does it everything, that might be where I wind up. So I'm on this journey of delay, trying to find, something that really works that I'm just going to be happy with. And I said, I've had good experience with the Empress. I had an Empress, the white one, that was, came out like 10 years back. The super delay, I think it was called, and it sounded beautiful, and it was on my second record. I'm not sure if it was on the first record, but you could hear anything that has some cool atmospheric delays on it. That's that Empress. And then it got lost or stolen. I don't know what happened to it at a gig. The whole pedal board went gone, and that was really a shame because that also had a Phase 90 on it, a vintage '73 Phase 90. I had to rebuy it, as you could see up here. You could see the corner of the Phase 90. That's another 1970 something bed box, Phase 90. Just if you want to hear it, of course you want to hear it. Okay. You better run these pickups. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? I don't know. I just have a thing about just certain pedals that just dial in a sound that just is. That's the sound, man. So anyway, the Empress and the Phase 90, the old one that I have, this was the same pedal. This vintage Phase 90 is all over that second record, Not Afraid to Be Lead. Available all fine stores, or just DaveBlairMusic.com. But anyway, I think that gives me a good, it gives you guys a good rundown. And so I'm going to keep these videos. It's more for myself because I'm going to do the same type of thing with the Empress and the Belle Epoque and whatever else, the Ventress timeline, and see, because your ears trick you. Sometimes you're just in a better mood, and the pedal, if you're not putting them next to each other, you're in a better mood, and it just sounds better that day because you're more inspired because you get good sleep the night before. So it's good to, your ears could really trick you. Sometimes it sounds amazing, and then you listen back, and it's like, ooh, your ears just adjusted or something. But I think putting next to these, I confirmed what I already thought from, I was messing with it earlier in the week, and I came to the same conclusion that is what I said. It's tremendous workhorse, does a lot of things, but if I'm trying to get the sound that I love out of these other ones, that's the magic that I just is a certain vibe in them. It's not quite there. In a loud gig, is anybody gonna notice but me? I don't know. In a recording studio, I think I would definitely notice it, especially if you're making wetter sounds. But live, for me, I'm nitpicky. I hate it when people say, "Oh, the audiences they can't even tell." I'm like, I don't know. The audience, yes, an audience isn't going to tell, the difference between what delay you use necessarily, but they hear one band that sounds, really good, and another one doesn't. And I guarantee the one that sounds really good is that guitar player and those musicians cared about picking the right things that work for them. Maybe we're a little crazy, like we might try 10 wah-wah pedals and find the one that we bond with. But at the end of the day, you make all these selections over years and you develop a sound, and people come up to you saying, wow, you got this great, warm, sweet sound or whatever that you've dialed in that works for you. And it also inspires you when you're hearing the sounds back that feel right to you, and you develop the sound and pedals and amps and guitars and pickups that work for you. You play it in a way that works for you, and you develop the sound that's just natural and organic, as opposed to someone just plugging into some modeling thing and pulling up patches. In my opinion, maybe eventually I'll go to a Helix or something, but in my opinion, I like that's just for me and everybody. We're artists, right? It's our own thing to find out what works for us. For me, and probably if you have watched this for this long, I don't know. It's been a long video just talking about the delays. If you guys watch like 2 hour pedal show, that pedal show, which I do. I watch the same episode 2 or 3 times and just go back and listen to the different delays or fuzzes or whatever, compressors. If you're that type of person, then you're like me, which you'll be like, you're a cork sniffer, and it's like, wait, this delay has just a little bit of a different vibe to it, and I can't quite get it the way I want it for the recording or whatever. So, I don't know. I'm still looking. Who knows? Well, sometimes you try a bunch of different things and you wind up circling back to what you already had. But as I'm listening to this, the Diamond, the Replica, and the Maxon all sound really good to me. And that Maxon is not an expensive pedal. Another one I've heard I want to try out is the Maleko 616 Dark. 616 is cool, but 616 Dark and the modulation on it sounded really beautiful to me. And those are not super expensive. Again, a lot of people use carbon copy, which is, not an expensive pedal. But it has one sound, and it does it really well. If you're Slapback or something, you're just, so you don't have to go crazy buying timelines and stuff. But I'm going to just try everything and then land on what I think works for me. And who knows what that will be. I might just wind up with with these pedals again. But it's fun. It's fun time. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments about these things, and any suggestions, recommendations, or what you thought sound-wise. Talk to you later.